It is my privilege and it is such a great honor to introduce two amazing Mishkanites. These are folks who have been builders in our community for a while, have connected with us from afar, have been part of our community, both back home and also here in Chicago. I'm really excited to introduce you to Felicia Savage Friedman, Martin Friedman. Felicia is the founder and CEO of Yoga Roots on Location, and Martin is the senior consultant and director of strategic initiatives for the Soul Focus Group. But more than that, they are beloved members of our community who have offered of themselves time and time again to help us think thoughtfully and critically about race, about Judaism and Jewishness, about Mishkan and how we can be a light and just a better presence in the world for really creating the world that we want to see. And so I'm gonna hand it over to them because their words are more powerful than mine. And I'm just excited to have their light shared with you this Shabbat, this last day of Pesach.
Thank you, Rabbi Steven. Thank you. That was a beautiful introduction. Appreciate you. Martin, you're muted.
I did that on purpose. Because I wanted to bring in the spirit of silence even as we speak. So good evening, everybody. Shabbat Shalom, Chag Sameach. We are so honored and excited to be here. My name is Martin Friedman, and I'm here with my life partner and wife.
Yes, Felicia Savage Friedman. She, her, hers, you all.
Yes, and I am he, him, his. And it's just such an honor for us to be able to talk to you all. And you know, in many ways, hopefully you all know, especially those of you that live in Chicago, that next Saturday for Shabbat services, Felicia and I and our daughter Maya are going to be leading a workshop around race and racism and whiteness and Jewishness and how they all intersect. And so this is an opportunity for you to kind of get a feel for us. Some of you might have seen Felicia and I during Kol Nidre service. We were very scripted that day. And we're not scripted today, which actually reminds me, I'm starting the timer. And so we get 2 minutes less.
Right.
I promised Rabbi Steven that we'll be out because we did not script ourselves this time, you all, just so you know. We want to share from the heart and we want to share in the spirit of Passover. And, you know, for us, the spirit of Passover is really going to be about individual liberation and collective liberation out of slavery. And that's what we're going to talk about today. As when Rabbi Steven and I spoke the other day, he said something to me like, let's not leave the spirit of Passover in Passover. Let's take that spirit of wanting liberation for ourselves and for each other to carry with us every day. And even like I've had the honor of going through a year of mourning for my father. So I sat in all of these spaces where we did, you know, the minyanim, all three of them over the course of the day, whenever I could make it. And they were part of Passover prayers in the Amidah every day. So that spirit is with us every day. And it's the spirit of individual and collective liberation that Felicia and I want to share with you today.
Yes, there was some additional noise in my background, so I wanted to mute. But thank you, Martin, for kicking us off here and understanding that anytime we train or teach or do a workshop, when we talk about racism, it just conjures up all kinds of emotions. And so knowing that's what we're going to share with you, and me being an integrative yoga embodied practitioner, I am always curious to know how folks are showing up in this space. So today for Shabbat, in this moment, knowing that we're going to, give you a mini teaser of our workshop, just want you to notice how you're showing up. What's going on for you in terms of how you're feeling in your body, or in your emotional body, just how are you feeling? And so I invite Martin and and I to participate, as well as all of you, to just put in the chat, how are you feeling? Just so we're aware of how you're showing up in this moment. For example, you could be feeling conflicting feelings. So I can be happy at the same time as being sad. So really acknowledging the complexity of the emotions that we may be feeling, or physical sensations we're feeling in our bodies. So if you would, I'll give you a minute to just think about and notice, how are you feeling?
And just a quick check-in with Jordan and other folks. Are we able to see people's
responses?
Yeah, are we able to see their responses?
Oh, okay.
Oh, okay.
Yep.
Got you.
You know what? Yeah, right. Yeah.
Jordan will
Thank you, Jordan.
Share some.
Yes. Fatigue.
Fatigued.
Mm-hmm. So honoring that space.
Felicia, how are you feeling?
Grateful. Someone's grateful. I'm anxious and excited and honored and humbled. Grateful to be in this space. Anxious about the world. Thank you. Confused. Yes. Beautiful. Thank you. Thank you for sharing. Overwhelmed by the realness of life and grateful to be here at the same time. Thank you. Yes. Yes. So, and just for a moment, I'm going to ask the multitaskers who are on, happy to have reached a Shabbat moment, but sad and struggling with some physical illness right now. Relax. Yes. Thank you all for being engaged. Really appreciate you taking the time out with you. Very much a part of our practice is us reclaiming our humanity 100. And part of it is us acknowledging how are we feeling in our body, our physical body and emotional bodies. So thank you all for being honest. Yes. Mm-hmm. Martin, I saw you put yours in.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
So are you good with us? You good with us moving forward, Felicia?
Yes. Yes. Thank you.
And maybe I would just say too, because, just take a moment, to just breathe into your body. Whatever it is that you're feeling, just breathe into your body for just a moment. Just take a nice, deep cleansing breath. Pause at the top of your breath. Exhale as deeply and completely as you can and pause. And as you do that, just really feel all of these different things that you're feeling right now and be okay with it, right? Because what the liberation that we're going to talk about is a liberation back to our true selves. It's a liberation back to who we really are through all of the ego-based identities, all of the false identities, all of the external things that people have told us about who we are, what our value and our worth is, because of our skin color, hair texture, facial features, because of our religion, because of how big our noses are, because of our gender, because of our class, because of our sexual orientation or our gender identity. Because of all of these things, the world tells us who we are. And the world tries to tell us who we are every day and put value on all those things that I just mentioned. That is a type of slavery that we're being asked to move away from today. And again, another thing that Rabbi Steven and I talked about is that Passover is a holiday where we're asked to connect with the most marginalized. And I want you to hold that sometimes the most marginalized is yourself. And you can be marginalized by the outside world, but we can also marginalize ourselves too. And so the liberation that we're speaking of, in order to even get to talk about the conversation around social justice, around anti-racism or anti-oppression, anti-patriarchy or anti-capitalism, before we can even get to that discussion, we have to see how we're holding ourselves back, right? That's really the narrow place. The narrow place is in between the way we're holding ourselves back and the way that the world defines us and holds us back from being our true and authentic self. So that's really what we're speaking of today. Today's a lot of things. It's also Earth Day, which I don't know if we're going to work Earth Day in. Maybe we will in a minute. But we want to talk about, about 4 years ago, and this was really on Felicia's. I got to just tell you all real quick. So I moved from Seattle, Washington with the intent of living in New York. I stopped in Cleveland for a few months to live with my mom on my way, like applying for jobs in New York. And I was looking for a nice Jewish woman to get with and have a Jewish home. And instead, the universe brought me Felicia. And what's so interesting is after our first date and we realized there were some pretty good sparks there, one of the things I told her is like, I really am coming back to live a Jewish life. And I have to tell you that Felicia has been so essential to my grounding myself in Judaism. And she, like, one of the things was we talked about the Omer, and she's like, we got to do Omer. She loves Omer. When the 49 days are over, she wants to start again, another 49 days. So this is our 4th year of counting the Omer together. And we're grounding that Omer in not just the count that's, sort of tradition in the Torah about, lining it up with the harvest. But for us, we're using a Kabbalistic approach where neither of us are Kabbalistic scholars, but we've connected to this Kabbalistic idea. But I'm just going to ask Rabbi Steven if he can just come back on for a moment and lead us in the prayer of the Omer tonight. And then we're going to ground the rest of what we're going to talk about in the Omer.
Right. And before Rabbi Steven, before you do that, I saw you in the chat. And so thank you to Martin. Would you explain what counting the Omer, what the Omer is? That's what Rabbi Steven.
Well, I want to explain it. So Rabbi Steven, can you explain it through like the Judaism lens? And then we're going to read some stuff and explain it more like through the Kabbalistic lens that we practice.
Perfect. Yeah, absolutely. So the Omer is this period of time following the first days of Passover that counts us all the way up to the holiday of Shavuot. It's 7 weeks of 7 days, so 49 in total. The 50th will be Shavuot. And I did my math there correctly. I think math is not a strong rabbi skill, and it's definitely not my strong rabbi skill. And actually, it was traditionally connected to the barley harvest, but it really walks us through, right, this period of time, not only from the holiday that was connected to the spring harvest, Shavuot is connected to the summer harvest, but then also the story of liberation from slavery in Egypt through Shavuot, which is the receiving of the Torah at Mount Sinai. So also this really transformative moment for our people as well. I'm happy to lead us in the blessing for the Omer. Let me just pull it up here. I'm going to screen share. Thank you, Chabad, for providing us this this sheet. So we'll say this blessing here together, and then we will count the days here. And I can't tell you what day it is because you're supposed to count it first after saying the blessing. Otherwise, I ruin the whole process. But you can read here what day to anticipate. Baruch atah Adonai Eloheinu melech haolam asher kiddushanu b'mitzvotav v'tzivanu al sefirat ha'omer. Blessed are you, source of all things, who sanctifies us through our actions, makes us holy through what we do. In this case, counting the Omer. Hayom Shiva Yamim Shehem Shavua Echad LeOmer. Today is the 7th day of the Omer, which is, in fact, 1 week so far.
That's right. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Rabbi Steven. You're a true yogi. You were flexible with that.
Yeah. You breathed through it and you were flexible. So you're a yogi.
Thank you.
So what we practice comes out of this book, and we just found out today, after it had been out of print for a while, it's back in print. We'll put it in the chat as well. Rabbi Ted Falcon, and I just have to give him a quick shout out because he's the rabbi at 40 years old that helped me kind of return to Jewishness, the spiritual essence of Jewishness. He had a Kabbalistic meditational synagogue in Seattle where I was living at the time. And so the spiritual grounding, they attach the 49 days to the 7. If you know anything about Kabbalah, it has 10 facets, which are all energy. And so, sort of the lower 7, each 7, there's 7 days. So 7 and 7. So the first day, for example, would be Chesed and Chesed. And the day that we're in 0 weeks and 7 days. So we're still in the week of Chesed, which is the 0 week. And then Malchut, which is the 7th, it'll be the last of the 7 that you count through the 7 weeks. So we're using the Kabbalah as a guide for the Omer. So I don't know if anybody has any questions about, about that they could put in the chat, but hopefully that's pretty good explanation. And what we want to do is, today, we just want to say that Malchut is kind of like they call it the kingdom, or it's the body. It's the lowest energy. It's like being in our bodies, right? And when I say lowest, it's not like high is the best, low, all of them, it's really circular. All of them feed each other. That's why we love the 7 and 7 process so much. And then loving kindness would be considered to be sort of like the highest level of those 7. So this is loving kindness in our bodies. So that's really what today is about. It's about bringing loving kindness back into our bodies. And that, again, is liberation. What we're saying is liberation is coming back to our true and authentic selves. Our true and authentic selves exist beyond race, beyond class, beyond gender, beyond sexual orientation, beyond anything that you can think of that is an outside identity that's given to you, right? Now, I want to just read a little bit. Felicia and I were going to take turns reading, so I'm going to do this. But we want to read a little bit of the first day because it captures really a lot of what we want to talk about that Rabbi Ted, speaks of in terms of this Kabbalistic Omer-based journey. And so this would be the first day, the beginning of the second night of Passover. Our challenge is to choose freedom. With freedom comes true life. With slavery comes the pretense of life. The journey from slavery to freedom is filled with wonder and challenges us to step beyond our past. Slavery is the stuckness in our lives that can carry great pain. It is the paralysis that brings a kind of deadness. This kind of enslavement separates us from our fuller possibilities and convinces us of our limitations. Our memory of historical slavery is a metaphor for the inner slavery that we experience still. The paradox of slavery is that it is safe. The world is predictable, and there is security in being able to blame the external world for the problems we experience. Now, I just want to pause there for a minute. Welcome back, Felicia. We missed you.
Thank you.
And we just want to pause there for a minute and just let that sort of sit with you, because it can be a little bit touchy, because to say that slavery is safe, that's not going to be something that's going to resonate with people, especially that are from that historical, that carry historical trauma from the enslavement, right? So Felicia, I don't know if you want to jump in and say something about that.
So first of all, I don't know what was happening in the universe. It totally shut down my computer. Maybe our energy has just overcome the computer. So sorry for my absence. But the enslavement, especially on this land, most of you know I am a Black cisgender woman. So I trace my lineage back to close to Jamestown, actually, in Virginia, Powhatan Collective. My great-great-grandfather is Powhatan Clopton. So understanding that, we can trace our roots back to slavery on this land, understanding that was external, but also that, this is really touchy in as much as, me as a Black woman talking about slavery, it's a re-traumatizing kind of moment. And so just holding myself tender right now, especially given the Wi-Fi connection or disconnection. So recognizing that something that that's fallen on me right now is the fact that I've had this practice of loving kindness of myself for over 30 years. And it is a response to my historical trauma that my lineage has suffered. And what I realized more and more as I study about Jewish folk, Ashkenazi Jewish folk specifically, because that's Martin's lineage, is that oftentimes there's an oppression of Olympics that goes on. And so what we've done, the sweet spot that I think that we've come together and continuously unpack and talk about and hold each other tenderly is this space where we have been oppressed, you know, both of our lineages. And so that loving kindness, we always have to go back to that place of loving kindness for ourselves so that we can continue to do this work together as tenderly as possible. Yeah.
Thank you, Felicia. Thank you. And I think, you know, one of the things that you just spoke to so eloquently is this idea of how you and I have tied our collective liberation together while also honoring our collective, you know, generational traumas. Right. And that, you know, our generational traumas are different and they're unique for each other because of the historical implications. There's some uniqueness, and there's also a lot of similarities. There's a lot of, Felicia and I have way more in common than we have different. And we share childhood trauma, you know, as well as generational, and how that mixes together, which is why for us, you know, this path of liberation, you know, out of all of this, because we both can trace our childhood trauma to generational trauma.
Right.
We know that hurt people were hurting us.
Right.
And, you know, liberation back to our true selves is liberation from that idea, so that we're not going to hurt the next generation. When you see me looking down, it's because I'm checking the time.
Yeah.
I want to say, as we talk about, you know, the end of the Passover journey and getting to freedom, Rabbi Falcon writes, "There is an awesome quality to our true freedom, for with greater freedom, we are able to respond more fully to ourselves, to each other, and to our world. A deep inner security then replaces our dependence on external circumstances that we often use to suppress change. Our Omer journey is a metaphor for our personal journey, from the confines of our current self-definitions to the wonder of renewed self-creation." Apparently, when the Jews left Egypt and were getting ready to cross that narrow place, and I always think, whenever I think of the narrow place, I always think of the Red Sea being parted. And on one side is the roaring waters of like generational trauma and how we stay enslaved for ourselves. And on the other side is that external enslavement, the external oppression that's real. And so we're caught in between that. And for those of us that are both Jewish and white, I also see like the cost of whiteness as one of those walls of water that wants to swallow us up, that whiteness wants to swallow us from our Jewishness, right? And then also on the other side is that generational trauma that we're escaping from. The idea is that in order to get to freedom, it's painful, it's dangerous, and you have to go through that narrow place. And it's my understanding from Rabbi Steven and other folks, and apparently this has been proven true through the movie The Prince of Egypt, that there were Egyptians that went with the Jews, and they threw down their swords and they left and they got safe passage. And what's so powerful, as Felicia and I were talking earlier, what's so powerful for us is that the Egyptians laid down their swords, which was their connection to being oppressors, aligned themselves with those who were being oppressed and got safe passage out. But they did it for themselves as much as for the other people. They weren't like, hey, come on, Jew, I'm going to get you through and save you. No, it was really the other way around. And what Felicia and I want to kind of close out is this idea that our relationship is built off of mutual liberation. We don't believe in the concept of white ally because, and you know, I mean, it may be controversial to some folks, but I would say, you know, anytime anybody says they're your ally, it's a great intent, but the impact often means that you still keep a power dynamic. So if I say I, as a white man, is an ally to Felicia as a Black woman, that means like I'm supportive of you in your struggle, but I'm not in it for my own struggle. So people say now, like they'll say co-conspirator, they'll say accomplice, for me, I personally love abolitionists, because like I want to abolish whiteness. I want to abolish whiteness so that I can be free. And so I think of those Egyptians that threw their swords down as abolitionists too. And they tied their liberation, their freedom. They couldn't be free without aligning themselves with those who are oppressed. And it invokes what we said earlier, that this is about us aligning ourselves with the most marginalized. And so that's what we want to offer you. And Felicia, anything you want to add to that? That we've tied ourselves together, and we tie ourselves with you all now as the Mishkan family, that we approach this work with you all as a work of mutual liberation, where all of us benefit from the ending of oppression, even if we're on the privileged side of something right now.
Right. Thank you, Martin. There's a couple of things I wanted to just share with you all that, in counting the Omer and this being the 7th day, and please forgive me for my mispronunciation, but I see it very much as Malhut is the kingdom. So that lower frequency of life. So speaking to the physical, and then Hesed is that loving kindness. So that's the higher dimension. And so in this 7th day, our meditation is bringing both that lower frequency and that highest frequency together. So it's a culmination of honoring the physical body as well as the spiritual, that loving kindness. And I just wanted to read the daily focus for the 7th day for you all, because this is just such powerful work. And that's why, as Martin says, I want to, count the days, count the Omer every day. And the daily focus is, I grow more aware of the presence of loving kindness in which this world is held. I feel this deeper influence through every cell of my being. I am always one with this universal source of life. All reality reflects this loving presence. In all I meet, I sense the blessing of this love. Mm-hmm. So this practice for us is really grounded in unconditional love. That loving kindness that's unconditional, that we love you regardless of who you voted for, what your philosophy is. We welcome you in because we are all family. We are all cousins. And that's for real. So in understanding that, I know we need to close. And I really want you all to just sit with and notice what's coming up for you, even in this discussion, whether you agree, disagree, that's all right. We want you to come on Saturday and hear our workshop at Shabbat, and let's continue to unpack this as family. This is what we do in families. So what do you notice in your body? What's coming up? As Martin shared with you, as I have shared with you. And if you could, we want you to put that in the chat. Just what's coming up for you? How are you feeling? How is this sitting with you or not? Honesty is best. That's how we establish authentic relationship. It's through being vulnerable. And this practice is a very vulnerable practice. And so as you're thinking about that, and as you're writing it in the chat, I want you to just notice what's coming up and just feel it and just acknowledge it. Acknowledge your humanity in this moment in time. And we are grateful for you. And we're thankful. Thank you all.
Yeah, thank you all so much.
Thank you both. This is the amount of wisdom, the thought, the love, the care. As you said, we are a family, and families, we talk about hard stuff, right? When we care about each other. Clearly, 20, 30 minutes is not enough time to truly dive into the depth of knowledge, an experience that both of you bring. So thank you, Martin and Felicia. And for those who can join us next Saturday, so tomorrow we're having regular old Shabbat services, JCYS for those who can make it in person, online for those who are streaming. But next Saturday, we'll be having Martin and Felicia back for those who are builders to join us for a very special Shabbat morning with both of them. To just dive even deeper and to really have the space and the time, certainly not to answer all questions, but I think to start us on this journey together as a family, toward greater healing and understanding.